Hello my dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the 8th chapter. It is Villages, Towns and Trade. Prabhakar at the blacksmith's shop. Prabhakar sat watching the smith at the local shop. There was a small bench on which iron tools like axes and sickles were laid out ready for sale. അപ്പോൾ ആ ചെറിയ ബെഞ്ചിൽ ചുറ്റികയും അരിവാളും ഒക്കെ വെച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് അല്ലേ വിൽക്കാൻ. A bright fire was burning and the two men were heating and beating metal rods into shape. ഇപ്പം രണ്ടാൾക്കാർ അവിടെ ഇരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. അവരെന്തിനാ ചൂടാക്കാനാ മെറ്റൽസിനെ അല്ലേ ഇരുമ്പിനെ ഓരോ ഷേപ്പ് ആക്കി എടുക്കുകയാണ്. ഇറ്റ് വാസ് വെരി ഹോട്ട് ആൻഡ് നോയ്സി ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് വാസ് ഫാസിനേറ്റിംഗ് ടു വാച്ച് വാട്ട് വാസ് ഹാപ്പനിങ്. നല്ല ചൂടും ഒച്ചയൊക്കെ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിലും എന്താ സംഭവിക്കുന്നത് എന്ന് നോക്കാൻ നല്ല രസമാണ്. Iron tools and agriculture. We often take the use of iron for granted today. അയൺ എന്താണ് അപ്പോൾ നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്ന വസ്തുക്കളിൽ ചിലതൊക്കെ അയൺ കൊണ്ടുണ്ടാക്കിയതാണ്. Things made up of iron and steel are a part of daily lives. The use of iron began in the subcontinent around 3000 years ago. Some of the largest collection of iron tools and weapons were found in the megalithic burials about which were read in chapter 4. Okay. Around 2500 years ago, there is evidence for the growing use of iron tools. This included axes for clearing forests and the iron ploughshare. കലപ്പയും എന്താണ് ആക്സ് ഒക്കെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചിരുന്നു അല്ലെ മഴുവൊക്കെ ഉപയോഗിച്ചിരുന്നു. As we had seen, the ploughshare was useful for increasing agriculture production. Other steps to increase production, that is irrigation. The kings and kingdoms you have been reading about could have existed without the support of flourishing villages. While new tools and the system of transplantation increased production, irrigation also were used. Irrigation works that were built during this time included canals, wells, tanks and artificial lakes. അതായത് കിങ്ങും ഒക്കെ എമർജ് ചെയ്യണ മുമ്പ് തന്നെ എന്തുണ്ടായി വേർ എക്സിസ്റ്റഡ് ഫ്ലറിഷിംഗ്. വിത്തൗട്ട് ദ സപ്പോർട്ട് ഓഫ് ഫ്ലറിഷിംഗ് വില്ലേജസ് സപ്പോർട്ട് ഇല്ലാതെ തന്നെ കിങ്ങും കിങ്ഡം ഒക്കെ എന്ത് ചെയ്തു എമർജ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. While new tools and the system of transplantation, production, pinandana irrigation are also used. If you look at the chart, you will find that some of the stages in the construction of irrigation works are mentioned. Fill in the rest by using the following phrases. Labor is provided by the people. Farmers also benefit because crop production is more certain. Farmers have to increase production to pay taxes. അപ്പോൾ പ്രൊഡക്ഷൻ എപ്പോഴും ഇൻക്രീസ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കണം കാരണം അവർക്ക് ടാക്സ് അടച്ചുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കണം. കിങ്സ് പ്രൊവൈഡ് മണി ആൻഡ് പ്ലാൻ ഇറിഗേഷൻ വർക്ക്സ്. So here are some certain steps given that you have to read. Who lived in the villages? There were at least 3 different kinds of people living in most villages in the southern and northern parts of the subcontinent. അതായത് 3 different kinds of peoples ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു അല്ലേ വില്ലേജസിൽ, the southern and northern part of the subcontinent. In the Tamil region, large landowners were known as Velalar. Ordinary plowmen were known as Uravar, and landless laborers including slaves, Kadaisiyar and Adimai. In the northern part of the country, the village headman was known as Grama Bojaga. Headman ആണ് Grama Bojaga എന്ന് പറയുക. Usually men from the same family held the position for generations. In other words, the post was hereditary. The Grama Bojaga was often the largest landowner. അപ്പോൾ അയാളാണ് എന്താ ഏറ്റവും ലാർജസ്റ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള ലാൻഡ് ഓണർ. Generally, he had slaves and hired workers to cultivate the land. സ്ലേവ്സ് അടിമകളും ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, പിന്നെന്താണ് വർക്കേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു അല്ലെ നിലമൊക്കെ നോക്കാനുള്ള വർക്കേഴ്സ് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. Besides, as he was powerful, the king often used him to collect taxes from the village. He also functioned as a judge and sometimes as a policeman. Apart from the Grama Bojaga, there were other independent farmers known as Grahabadas. Most of them were smaller landowners. അപ്പോൾ മിക്കവാറും എന്തായിരിക്കും ചെറിയ ലാൻഡ് ഓണേഴ്സ് ആയിരിക്കും. And then there were men and women such as the Dashakarmakara who did not own land and had to earn a living working on the fields owned by others. മറ്റുള്ളവർ ഓൺ ചെയ്ത ലാൻഡിലാണ് അവർ പൊതുവെ വർക്ക് ചെയ്തിരുന്നത്. In most villages, there were also some craftsmen, persons, blacksmith, potter, carpenter, and weaver. The earliest Tamil composition. Some of the earliest work in Tamil, it is known as the Sangam literature, were composed around 2300 years ago. These texts were called Sangam because they were supposed to have been composed and compiled in assemblies. Sangams of poets. They were held in the city of Madurai. The Tamil terms mentioned above are known as Sangam literature. Coins. Archaeologists have found several thousands of coins belonging to this period. The earliest coins, which were in use for about 500 years, were punch-marked coins as shown here. Punch-marked coins. Punch-marked coins were generally rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape. Punch-marked പറയുമ്പോൾ rectangular അല്ലെങ്കിൽ round shape ആയിരുന്നു. Either cut out of metal sheets or made up of flattened metal globules. A small spherical body. The coins were not inscribed but were stamped with the symbols. Symbol ഉണ്ട് ആ കോയിൻസിൽ എന്താണ് symbol അച്ചടിച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട് using dice or punches. Hence they are called punch marked coins. These coins are found over most parts of the subcontinent and remained in circulation till the earliest centuries CE. Other means of exchange. Read this short poem from the Sangam collection. As they carry the white paddy of their land to exchange it for the salt of another, crossing the long roads in carts, through sands white as moonlight, taking whole families who hate to be left behind, the departure of the salt merchants leave the cities empty. Salt was produced plentifully along the sea coast. What are the merchants planning to exchange it with? How are they traveling? Cities with many functions. Very often a single town was important for a variety of reasons. Let us look at the example of Mathura. Mathura had been an important settlement for more than 2500 years. It was important because it was located at the crossroads of two major routes of travel and trade. From the northwest to the east and from north to south. There were the fortifications around the city and several shrines. Farmers and herders from adjoining areas provided food for the people in the city. Mathura was also a center where some extremely fine sculpture was produced. Around 2000 years ago, Mathura became the second capital of Kushanas, about whom you would read. Mathura was also a religious center. There were Buddhist monasteries, Jaina shrines, and is an important center for the worship of Krishna. Several inscriptions on surface such as stone slabs and statues have been found in Mathura. Generally, there are short inscriptions recording gift made by men to monastery and shrines. These were made by kings and queens, officers, merchants, and craftsmen who lived in the city. For instance, inscriptions from Mathura mention goldsmith, blacksmith, weavers, basket makers, garland makers, and perfumers. Make a list of the occupation of people who lived in Mathura. List one occupation that was not practiced in Harappan cities. Crafts and craftsmen. We also have archaeological evidence for craft. These include extremely fine pottery known as the northern black polished ware. It gets its name from the fact that it is generally found in the northern part of the subcontinent. Remember that the archaeological evidence for many crafts may not have been survived. We know from texts that the manufacture of cloth was important. There was famous centers such as Varanasi in the north, Madurai in the south, and both men and women worked in the centers. Northern black polished ware. It is a hard wheel-made metallic looking ware with a shiny black surface. The potter used to expose the earthenware to very high temperature in his skill, which resulted in the blackening of its outer surface. A fine black slip was also applied on it, which gave the pottery a mirror-like shine. Rules of spinning and weaving. These rules are from the Arthashastra mentioned in chapter 7. They describe how spinning and weaving could be done in workshops under the supervision of a special official. Widows, young women who were differentially abled, nuns, mothers of courtesans, retired women servants of the king, women who have retired from service in temples, may be used for processing wool, bark, cotton, hemp, and flax. They should be paid according to the quality and quantity of work. Women who are not permitted to leave their homes can send maidservants to bring the raw material from the superintendent and take the finished work back to him. Women who can visit the workshop should go at dawn to give their work and receive the wages. There should be enough light to examine the work. In case the superintendent looks at the women or talks about anything other than the work, he should be punished. If a woman does not complete the work, she will have to pay a fine and her thumbs can be cut off. Make a list of all the women who could be employed by the superintendent. Do you think women would have faced any problems while working? Many craftsmen and merchants now formed association known as Shrinis. These Shrinis of craftsmen provided training, procured raw materials, and distributed the finished product. Then Shrinis of merchants organized the trade. Shrinis also served as banks where rich men and women deposited money. This was invested and part of the interest was returned or used to support religious institutions such as monasteries. A closer look, Arikamedu. Find Arikamedu in Puducherry on map 7. Between 2200 and 1900 years ago, Arikamedu was a coastal settlement where ships unloaded goods from distant lands. A massive brick structure which had been a warehouse was found at the site. Other finds include pottery from the Mediterranean region such as amphorae, tall double-handed jars that contain liquids such as wine or oil, and stamped red glazed pottery known as Arantine ware, which was named after a city in Italy. This was made by pressing wet clay in a stamped mold. There was yet another kind of pottery which was made locally. അപ്പോൾ വേറൊരു കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് എന്താണ് ഒരു പോട്ടറി കൂടി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു അല്ലേ. The Roman designs were used. Roman lamps, glasswares and gems have also been found at that site. Small tanks have been found that were probably dyeing vats used to dye cloth. There is a plenty of evidence for the making of beads from semi-precious stones and glass. Lists evidence that indicates that there was contact with Rome. An account by a Greek sailor, the story of Barigassa. It is a Greek name for Baruch. The gulf is very narrow at Barigassa and very hard to navigate for this coming from the sea. Ships had to be steered in by skillful and experienced local fishermen who were employed by the king. The imports into Barigassa were wine, copper, tin lead, coral, topaz, cloth, gold, and silver coins. Exports from the town included plants from the Himalayas, ivory, agate, carnelian, cotton, silk, and perfumes. Special gifts were brought by merchants for the king. This included vessels of silver, singing boys, beautiful women, fine wines, and fine clothes. Trade and traders. You have read about the northern black polished ware. This fine pottery, especially bowls and plates, were found from several archaeological sites throughout the subcontinent. How do you think it reached these places? Traders may have carried them from the places where they were made to sell them at other places. South India was famous for gold, spices, especially pepper, precious stones. Pepper was particularly valued in the Roman Empire, so much so that it was known as black gold. So traders carried many of these goods to Rome in ships across the sea and by land in caravans. There must have been quite a lot of trade, as many Roman gold coins have been found in South India. Can you think of how and why this reached India? A poem about trade. We can find evidence of trade in the Sangam poems. Here is one which describes the goods brought into Puhar, an important port on the east coast. Here are brought swift, prancing horses by sea in ships, bales of black pepper in carts, gems and gold born in the Himalayas, sandalwood born in the western hills, the pearls of the southern seas, and corals from the eastern oceans, the yield of the Ganges and crops from the Kaveri, foodstuffs from Sri Lanka, pottery from Myanmar, and other rare and rich imports. Traders explored several sea routes. Some of these followed the coast. There were, there were others across the Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal, where sailors took advantage of the monsoon winds to cross the seas more quickly. So, if they wanted to reach the western coast of the subcontinent from East Africa or Arabia, they chose to sail from the southwest monsoon, and sturdy ships had to be built for those long journeys. New kingdoms along the coast. The southern half of the subcontinent is marked by a long coastline and with hills, plateaus, and river valleys. Among the river valleys, that of Kaveri is the most fertile. Chiefs and kings who controlled the river valleys and the coast became rich and powerful. Sangam poems mention the Muvanda. This is a Tamil word meaning three chiefs, used for the heads of three ruling families, Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas, who became powerful in South India around 2300 years ago. Each of the three chiefs had two centers of power, one inland and on the coast. Of these six cities, two were very important: Puhar or Kaveri Pattinam, the port of the Cholas, and Madurai, the capital of Pandyas. The chiefs did not collect regular taxes. Instead, they demanded and received gifts from the people. They also went on military expeditions and collected tribute from neighboring areas. They kept some of the wealth and distributed the rest among their supporters, including members of their family, soldiers, and poets. Many poets, whose compositions are found in the Sangam collection, composed poems in praise of chiefs, who often rewarded them with precious stones, gold, horses, elephants, chariots, and fine clothes. Around 200 years later, a dynasty known as the Sadavahanas became powerful in western India. The most important ruler of the Sadavahanas was Gautamiputra Sri Sadakarni. We know about him from an inscription composed on behalf of his mother, Gautami Balasri. He and other Sadavahana rulers were known as lords of the Dakshinapada, literally the route leading to the south, which was also used as a name for the entire southern region. He sent his army to the eastern, western, and southern coast. Why do you think he wanted to control the coast? Silk route and the Kushanas. Some kings tried to control large portions of the route. This was because they could benefit from taxes, tributes, and gifts they were brought by traders traveling along the route. In return, they often protected the traders who passed through their kingdoms from attack by robbers. The best known of the rulers who controlled the Silk Route were the Kushanas, who ruled over Central Asia, northwest India, around 2000 years ago. The two major centers of power were Peshawar and Madura. Takshila was also included in their kingdom. During their rule, a branch of Silk Route extended from Central Asia down to the seaport to the mouth of the river Indus, from where silk was shipped westward to the Roman Empire. Okay, so that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share, and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.